Good morning, classmates. First, I would like to apologize for this simple presentation. If I'm quite honest, at this point in the program, I'm exhausted and still working on my capstone. So, this was the simplest way that I could present it. And I'm not really that great at creating PowerPoint presentations. I know. I digress. Back to the ethical presentation at hand. So, the ethical dilemma that I chose is the dilemma of the case of New York versus Denise Spagnola of upstate New York. Ms. Spagnola was charged with the failure to appropriately supervise an unlicensed person. Ms. Spagnola admitted to the charge and was issued a fine of $500. She was also placed on a 1 year probation with the New York State Licensing Advisory Board. I found this information by following up with the link that we were presented with, which I found quite interesting actually once I got in and was able to choose a case. I also had a personal experience similar to the one I just mentioned. So I was intrigued to do more research. And as per New York State Educational Department guidelines, the law attached to her charge can be found in Article 6530, and the law is either 24 or 25. I felt that both actually applied. The law reads: practicing or offering to practice beyond the scope permitted by law, or accepting and performing professional responsibilities which the licensee knows or has reason to know that he or she is not competent to perform, or performing without adequate supervision or of professional services which the licensee is authorized to perform. The exception was stated that only under supervision of a licensed professional, except in an emergency situation where a person's life or health is in danger. As I said, that was Law 24. I felt 25 also applied, and it followed directly after. And it read: delegating professional responsibilities to a person when the licensee delegating such responsibilities knows or has reason to know that such persons are not qualified by training. That can be an intern, because an intern is still in the process of being trained. You haven't been trained yet. By experience, you could be a newly graduated individual, and perhaps you haven't had the opportunity to have this type of experience, or by licensure to perform them. Quite frankly, you don't have the license to perform the needed duties at the time. Excuse me. And as I mentioned earlier, in the presentation and in this video, I have been faced with a similar situation, and I was curious and inquisitive. The charge listed does not offer details surrounding the incident or the incidents that led up to her charge and subsequent admittance. I was wondering what was the evidence, and what was the actual individual who was unlicensed participating in. That was my own personal curiosity, but I tried to find it, and I actually couldn't. And upon review of the NASW Code of Ethics, Values and Principles Guide, the values of integrity and competence came to mind, and I thought they best applied as well to the situation. The guide suggests and implies clinicians should behave in a trustworthy manner. I would like to use the simple definition of integrity that I use when speaking with my clients, with my son, with people in general. And basically, if someone says, well, what do you really mean by integrity? Well, the idea that you will act accordingly and appropriately even when no one else is around or looking. Then my question becomes, can you really provide competent practice if you lack integrity? I guess some can argue that they are not connected, but I would beg to differ. And then continuing, at the field placement site, in reference to similar situations, staff and interns are supposed to be supervised by the clinical director or upper management / operations staff. For those of you who work in nonprofit, as you may well know, we usually have to wear many hats. So operations is also upper management. And then that's Monday through Friday. On the weekends, all upper management staff, for the most part, is on call, specifically clinical staff. I apologize for the screen. I am actually in the office and the Wi-Fi is pretty shoddy, but better here than at home. So again, I apologize. Miss Spignola did have a consequence for failing to supervise accordingly, and she paid a fine, as was mentioned. But the example offered no detail as to where the incident in question took place. What I could find by simply Googling her was actually her demographic information, where her license was actually located. And it was upstate New York. There was a 9% poverty rate, which I felt was pretty high. Her neighborhood, well, where she was listed for the license, was multi-ethnic. And there actually didn't seem to be a lot of social workers in the area. I Googled it through New York State, where you could find local clinicians in your area, and it was quite limited. And I found that to be interesting as well, that in a neighborhood, well, in an area, a rural environment where there's a limited amount of social services, including clinicians who actually have the credentials to provide these types of services, that this incident would have occurred. There was also something called an application for consent order granted. I couldn't really find what that actually meant, although I searched around for it. So Professor White, I'm not sure if you know what that means, but I'm very interested to know what that means. And as I stated, there was the monetary penalty of $500 and a 1-year probation with the licensing board. There were no other options available or discussed within the case example. But from my own experience, just to bring it back and conclude, I guess sometimes that can happen, and unknowingly you can be put in a situation where you really don't have the skills and training to handle what's going on, and you can try to handle it as best as you can as someone who hasn't had the training and skills yet to deal with that type of situation. But supervision is always needed, and the ability to reach out and gather support from those who have more training, experience, knowledge, and education is always a plus. It can make things quite challenging when that isn't really an option and you are in a position of trying to learn. So again, thank you so much for the time, and I look forward to your feedback. I apologize for the plainness of this video, and have a great day.